Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 2, Episode 6 of Alice in Borderland. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So immediately picking up in the aftermath of last episode, we have Usagi going up against the Queen of Spades, and obviously she doesn't like Usagi, because it's like, well, for one, Usagi's staying in the way of what she wants. And even later on, they're like, oh, should we get that woman? And it's like, no, I want her to watch and kind of like watch all her hypocrisy like fall away. Because she looks at Usagi as like this hypocrite that like, right, her idealism of believing like, oh, like, because she's like, right, you must not have ever cared about anyone. It's like, oh, you're such a hypocrite. Because I think for her, it's like, really, it's just self-preservation and what you wanted. And I think that's what the queen was kind of throwing back at her. But it's like, yeah, things are heavily skewed not in their favor, because it's like, cool, yeah, Usagi and Arisu are still hanging on, but she's still got the majority of, she's got not just the majority, she's got everyone else. And it's just, that's how the game's going to sway in this direction. But for Usagi, it's like, no, I'll see you through this. I will make sure this kid's okay. It's like, yeah, no one wants to see a kid die, but it's a different story when your own life is on the line. And so Usagi and Arisu end up running into like three other people who are like, right, by doing this, you're basically killing us, putting us on your team. Like, we want to be with the queen. That way we can survive. But for her, it's like, yeah, but if you do that, yeah, you'll survive, but you'll be stuck here with her playing you might not have to play any other games, but you'll forever be stuck here playing this game over and over again, killing other people like yourself, you know? I mean, maybe even killing yourselves if you end up getting switched to the other side, and you know, and it's a cycle that just never ends. Also, it seems like, so the whole thing I was going into last episode about her numbers being small, I guess in the end result, I guess it doesn't matter. Because I thought that was going to be a whole point, but that turned out to not be a point at all. Like I said, I just thought it was suspicious that like her team went in with only like three other people beside herself. I'm not counting her, but it's like, I just thought that was so weird and suspicious. It's like, but to be, once again, there's no telling like what the last game was. Like, it might have only been like 4 participants, so I should have thought about that. It's probably always just her until like she skewed things last game. I mean, because like, I have to also consider the fact is Kiyuma's game, I mean, these games just rolled out. So I didn't count the fact is like, right, these are probably the first time, like this is probably Queen's second time playing this game now that she has other people on her side. Kiyuma and his team, that was the first time they played that game. Well, obviously, but I'm saying like, because they hadn't, but at least she's won the game before. Like Kiyuma and them, like they're testing this game out for the first time. They're playing it for the first time, despite, you know, Shitara being the one that came up with it and everything. Tensions and all that aside, right? But like I said, obviously, like, there's the aspect that everyone's like, right, no one wants to believe, no one wants to hope. But Usagi, after everything, is finally in a position to hope again. She even talked about the fact is that, yes, not everything in that other world is great, but that world that birthed me and made me who I am today, you know, she wants to get back to that world because she's thankful to that world. That's the world her father is in, and that helped shape her and who she is, and what she thought about last episode about what her father would want. He'd want her to live her life to the fullest, not be stuck in this world just going from one battle to battle just to survive. It's like, I want to survive so I can go home, you know? And the others, like, despite everything, want that too. That they lost hope in believing that this will all happen. It's like, there's no guarantee that this will happen, but they're thinking like, once the games are clear, we can at least potentially go home. You know, it's worth believing, it's worth hoping for, because obviously, like, hope can be, you know, speaking of Danganronpa, as I've talked about in a few episodes, it is that balance of hope and despair. Sometimes, like, you know, someone could switch that hope into being such a crushing despair once you let someone build up that hope and then you rip it apart. But hope is all you have in this world, and if we're just, you know, I want to believe that there's a chance to go home, like, because what's the alternative? Just believing like, yeah, just living in this world. It's like, no, I want to live in that world that birthed me and gave me a shot. And so they came up with a plan to get everyone back. So draw everyone in, get as many people on their side. And it's like, right, we're going to have to get them all in like large clusters. There was even that last dude who showed up before like their second to last turn was up. And he was like, right, I want to go back to that world too. He's like, I want to believe. And he let Arisu shift him to the blue team. And little by little, they ended up shifting things around and winning. And the only person left on that team is the queen. You know? Obviously, just like with the Kyuma situation, Arisu asked her by the end, what, you are a citizen, you are players like us, so is there no way to actually get home once we clear all the games? But for her, it's like, you'll have to figure it out for yourself, because I think it's one of those answers, like, it's more important for you to get that answer when you get there rather than receiving it, because obviously you'll have if you hear the answer now, I think for her, maybe there's a little bit of her that's like, I don't want to crush that hope. That hope is what's keeping you alive, it's keeping you surviving, because for her, the world, she was like, right, the world was so rigid and there was no freedom. In this world, she feels like she has so much freedom. And that's why she fights so hard to survive in this world. That's why she loves this world. Why she says like other shit. She's like, I don't know what you did to convince the others but it's like, right, she wants to go home and she believes in that now. And the queen's like, right, but once again, you'll have to find out those answers for yourself. You'll have to wait to see what the end result is. But she's like, right, she wants to go out on her own terms, dying, being free. Hops over the edge and falls, and a laser strikes her midair. In the end, the little boy ends up staying with that group. I guess he has, it's like, right, we can't always take you with us, but also, like, you have a group, a foundation around you now. So they made sure now they all have extended visas, even the little kid. So I wonder will they go pick up that lady whose arm was messed up, who was looking after him last episode as well, because she did take care of him. So maybe she can come and be part of that group. But, I think it is a beautiful switch of like, yeah, we're willing to let this kid die, and now it's like, no, let's hope and believe we can all get home together. We don't have to let's not sacrifice him just to keep ourselves alive in this world where we'd have to repeat this over and over and over again, and leading to maybe someone here's death or other people's deaths as well. So, but Arisu and Usagi plan on making it back home together. They want to go home together. And they go to a hot springs place, which I was amazed. Like, the moment they're there and it's like, oh, it's a hot spring, I was like, this had to be where, like, Akane's first game happened. But I thought it was interesting. I was like, Arisu didn't really piece that together, because she probably never, like, we as the audience got to see it, but she probably never told Arisu the actual details of the game. So he probably didn't realize. She just said, like, I'm the only one that survived my first game. She never got specific about it, but I think that's the boiling escape game. But they are in the hot springs, and it's like, we should hop in, take a bath. And she's like, oh, together? And he's like, no. And it's like, then they also see these elephants, which the elephants most likely escaped from the zoo. And it's like, it's like, if we hadn't, like, decided to stop here, we would have missed out on something so beautiful and majestic like this. But then there's also like no, I wasn't looking at you, I was looking at the elephants. But it's like, no, let's, stay here together. So... and they finally kiss and you're like, yeah! But the moment kind of gets ruined because they happen to look and see there's a dead body underneath the rubble. It's like, yeah, that's going to kill the mood a little bit. But what I really like, too, is that we bounce between some of the other characters and kind of get, like, some past stuff a little bit. We catch up with Kuina. She found her way to the hospital her mom was in. Interestingly enough, I thought that was fascinating. The day her mom was admitted was it like June of like 2021? I was like, oh, that's interesting. Once again, the show came out in 2020, so I guess I don't know if they necessarily had like that foresight. It just feels like because they set that in the future enough like that I mean, is it really that big of a deal to do that? I don't know. I just thought that was. I mean, they never really. I don't think there was nothing in the first one that actually told you the date or like the year and stuff like that. So this is just interesting. They chose this particular time to. Well, because I think I know like manhwa and webtoons get around that by just putting like, I even know like the Persona games, at least like, I think the older ones did this too. At least in Persona 5 they do it. Like the date is 20XX, like the last two digits. It's like kind of being like, it could take place anytime. 2024, 2020, like 2019. Like it's one of those, anywhere between 2010 and 2099 essentially. So, but to keep that vague enough, and like I said, I've read a few manhwa and webtoons, maybe even manga. I know they've done that too. I guess like maybe you don't really go out of your way to do that live action wise. I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. Like, I don't know if that's going to be important in some regard. The fact is, it is set in like 2021, despite the show being out in 2020. Either way, um, but Kuina, there, and she's like most of the events of the episode, she's sitting there, being like, "Yeah, I miss you, Mom." Then we see An, who comes across a deer, and it makes her think back to her job, seeing a crime scene, and it's this young lady that died. She was murdered, but it's like she, at the very least, even though she knew she was going to die, she still fought like hell. She hoped to fight her way out of this, And to him, like that guy, the officer, or maybe he's part of the forensic squad, like she is. But it was just the thing of like that willingness to kind of fight, even, And I think that's the beautiful nature of this episode. Jumping ahead, jumping ahead a little bit, but not really. Is like this episode was about instilling hope. Like everyone was kind of a little hopeless, but like Usagi and Arisu found their hope together, and it's like, right, this might be the end for us. I mean, we could always end up dying soon, but let's give this our all. Let's we might as well go out fighting. An gets her resolve back. She's holding on to her hope. Kuina's holding on to her hope of returning to her mom. Now, what was really surprising is when we caught up with Chishiya again, and it's like, lo and behold, he's in another face game, up against 3 other people and Kazuryu, who is the king of this particular game. I was like, wow, because I rewatched season 1 prior to season 2, and I did not remember the mirror twist until like the very end of the episode. I mean, it wasn't until the reveal I was like, oh, I forgot about that. But because during the witch game, I was like, where the hell did they go? Because I didn't remember like Mira and Kazuryu just like bounced at the start of the witch game. I was like, what the? And now it's like, oh, it makes sense. Now it's like, oh, and now it's like, oh, here you are, king of the. I was like, how the hell did that happen? It's like, oh, you were undercover the entire time. And Chishi is like, why were you at the beach to begin with? It's like, oh, you were undercover. What were you trying to figure out? I thought that was so fascinating. It's like, I mean, it makes sense. Once again, all the kings are like all the kings and queens were once players themselves. All the citizens of this country were all players at one point in time themselves. So now this ends up being this interesting balancing of the scales, and we get like the flashbacks this episode. We got some from Kazuryu that it's like, oh, you're a lawyer, but he's like, yeah, but my past doesn't matter. He's like, you say that, and Chishiya's like, but you still chose this, a courtroom, to be the place that you decide to have your game. It's like, that speaks volumes. And so it ends up being this game balancing of the scales. I love that. It's one of those things I can imagine reading a manga. I'm like, okay, like the manga you get to read at your own pace. Obviously, like I'm reading subtitles, also trying to figure out like how the game works. But like picking numbers, getting the average of everyone's numbers and getting times it by 0.8. And deciding and figuring out who's closest, and that being the winner. And the people who hit -10 automatically die. And every time someone dies, a new rule is implemented in the game. It's quite the fascinating game, and it's a mind game of trying to figure out, like, right, logically speaking, what is everyone else going to end up choosing? Like, it's that, because you also have to kind of read your opponent to some extent. So it ended up being a really fascinating game. But we learned from Kazuryu, whose whole point of this is like, it's like, right, the value of life. And I think that's such an interesting and complicated question, because he was idealistic lawyer. It's like, right, we're representing these people, this company, I think, that's responsible for like getting a lot of people sick and won't even pay for the treatment, won't admit fault. So at least let's do some settlement. But the guy's like, yeah, I get it. That idealism is fine and dandy, but it's like, yeah, so what's going, the world just doesn't work like that. It is kind of like idealism versus the cruel reality of things, kind of seeing the ugly side of things. It's like, right, using the words of fairness and just mean nothing when there's so much evil in this world. Your job as a lawyer isn't about fair and just. It's about making whatever you need to make just. Like, so whatever position you're on, you need to make it just. And that ends up being something Kazuryu ended up kind of, that will chip away at your soul. But also it's like, yeah, like, why is, in a just world, no one life would be more valuable than another. The conversation about how to deal with poverty, because his boss or whatever, or I'm assuming that was his boss, was kind of about the perspective of it takes one very rich, powerful person to kind of be able to kind of change things. But he was talking about like, but yeah, if you do that and put it all in one person, that spreads the wealth disparity between, you know, the rich and the poor. It widens that gap even more. It's about kind of like evening things out, kind of helping those less fortunate and kind of building them up as well. So that ends up being an interesting conversation about, once again, what's the value of a life? And it's like, how do you decide? The sad thing is the world decides time and time again, where it's like, right, as Chishia said, money talks. And because that surprised me when it was like, right, like if you had 1 million vaccines that you could give to people, who would you give it to? And Chishia's like, I'd give it to children who have no parents and no money. And he's like, even Kazuryu was like, that's an unexpected answer from you. Even I'm like, yeah, you did a duplicitous bastard? But he's like, yeah, but that's an idealistic world. He's like, I'm not stupid enough to believe the world will work like that. Money talks, so who's ever more wealthy will be able to benefit from that. And we find out the reason why he knew that is because we find out Chishia was a doctor. I was like, what the fuck? I would have never guessed you were a doctor. That is wild. And like his patient was a kid, and I was like, oh, so that's what influenced that choice for him. I'm curious, are most of his patients, like, I wonder, like, are most of his patients children? I wonder, is that why, or is it specifically because of that kid he was treating? But he was told by like a higher up being like, hey, so that kid, he's supposed to get his transplant next week, yeah, is going to someone else. This person is a friend, is the child of a friend of the director of this hospital, and this particular friend finances a lot at this hospital, so we kind of have to go their way. It's how it works. And Chishia's like, right, so what am I supposed to tell the mother? He's like, yeah, just tell her something. You make one up, like, you know? And sadly, her son died. And what did the director, he's like, hey, like, even if the kid had gotten a transplant last week, he probably would have. That's the key word there, would have. You don't know for sure if he would have died. And Chishi is like, no, it doesn't affect me. I get it. It's just, that's part of the job. And then it's just like the seediness of it. It's like, all right, here's this person and this person. I guess they figured like, right, you're going to let a lot of this slide. It's not going to affect you. But Chishia has quite the poker face. And I think this game in particular, you saw that mask slip. You saw it in his eyes that like Chishia has a lot of self-hate in himself of just who he was and what he let kind of go. As this conversation about what makes one life more valuable than another, it's like, right, money was able to sway him and others into making this choice. So I think he was kind of a little like, yeah, wherever the chips fall, like I've always been running headlong towards death's door. So whatever ball falls, you know, at the beginning, he's like, you know, playing the game. And the deaths are brutal. It's like, was it sulfuric acid in those? And every time you lose points up until you get minus 10 points, then the sulfuric acid tips over and it drenches you. And it's just like, you see the burned, bloody heap that is left after like the flesh gets burned. It's just like, and it's like, oh, that's brutal. And Chishia kind of beating, what was her name? Daimon? Because it's like, right, you were hoping me and him would cancel each other out, make our points invalid. That way I'd be knocked off, but it will at least lessen the gap between you and Kazuryu, who Kazuryu has a 3-point lead. You were hoping now making it a 2-point lead. And it's like, right, I knew you weren't going to choose these numbers, like the double numbers like 55 to 88, you weren't going to choose those. The simple numbers are like zeros at the end, and he's like, these are the most likely common numbers people would pick. So he's like, it was a 50-50 between 62 and 74, and she's like, I should have gone 74, you know? And even, you know, because the whole conversation started off with like, right, this is about fairness and the lives being all equal, but she was like, right, no life is ever equal because, hey, there's gold kind of takes a lot of stuff. And even Chichiya at the end was like, she's the one that said like that not all lives are equal. I wonder what was going through her mind at the end right before she died. Did she still kind of believe that, you know? So it ended up being this really interesting, I mean, it's like a sociological, philosophical, I guess even economical question. And I don't like, idealistic, and I am a very naive and idealistic person. I don't know how to fix everything because I'm an idiot. But the fact of the matter is, idealistically, you'd want everything to be fair and just, but that's also the complicated things because not everything is black and white, but some things should be black and white. It should just be like, we should do the right thing. Was like, well, what's right for one person isn't right for another, and it's not the easiest thing. Idealistically, you hope that it would be. It should be simple, but not even the most simple things are simple because things get complicated, Once again, everyone has their own reasoning for doing what they're doing. So once again, like a life being more valuable than another, it's like, right, Chishia's point of like, yeah, let's give it to these children who have no one, no parents, no support, no money. Let's give it to them to kind of be able to live a life. But it's like, yeah. But when Daima died, it led to a new rule getting corrected. It's like created. So you can pick like if the person chooses obviously because of the averaging out, if you choose 0, the average out is going to work in your favor. But if the person ends up choosing 100, they win. But if that person decides like, okay, this person might choose 100, I'm gonna pick 1. So at the end of the game, this game is the last chunk of this is like, right, it's a 33.3333% chance. Yeah, those are the only ideal choices: 0, 1, or 100. So, and Shishia made it clear by the end after we got to see his past. He's like, I'm telling you, I'm picking 100. He's like, wait, if I pick, all I have to do is pick 1 and I win. And so he's like, yes, but like, go ahead. And he left it up to Kazuryu to decide kind of the fairness of it all. Because now it's like, right, this is supposed to be now with this new rule, the game is fair and simple. Once again, there are only 3 options to pick if you want to try and win this game. So Kazuryu ended up choosing 0 the final rounds. And even in the end, Shishia is like, right, I want you to see what choice I make. He's like, I want to see what choice you make at the end of all of this. And Kazuryu, there's multiple things. I just mentioned this guy like last episode or something. The guy from episode 4, the bus game, the one who survived with Usagi and Arisu. It's this interesting conversation about ideals because he was there. Obviously, him and An were there. Ultimately, when Hatter was like, "Here, look, I'm building the beach," and he's like, "Why are you doing it? Like, why would you kind of do this?" And Hatter's like, "For my ideals." And during one of the games, Kazuryu is like, is like, "Yeah, you go on ahead." He's like, the guy's like, "No, a young man helped me one time." I was like, "Who is?" And I was like, "It's that dude." I was like, "Oh my god!" And it's like the domino effect, and he will never know that the person who helped that guy was Arisu. So he'll never know that, which is crazy. And so ultimately, he ends up that guy ends up helping because he's like, right, I want to make my life's meaning will be the fact is I was able to help someone else, kind of like, paying it forward. So he kept Kazuryu going. And then there was the situation with Momoko, which I thought was interesting when he talked to her because I guess that might have been, that wasn't his game by creation, I don't think. I don't think he's the one that made that. Well, she made it sound like it was his game, but maybe he's specifically talking about now that we're moving into the face game perspective of things, I'm going to make my game fair and square. But Momoko said this like, he's like, you chose to be, I was like, whoa, she made that choice herself. She chose that because she's like, I want to believe in my ideals at the very end. I'm going to die anyway, so why don't I die? Because she's like, I believe in the good hearts of people. I believe people, she's like, I believe there won't be a massacre here. Things won't go the way you think they will. I want to die believing in my ideals. If I'm going to go one way or another, might as well go out on my own terms, believing in my ideals. And the sad thing is, obviously, it ended up being a massacre, but obviously, Arusu show that, the right like that, once again, having an ability to kind of change people's hearts and minds and stuff like that, and kind of revealing the truth of that game. But, when it was all said and done, him and Mira are like, all right, let's kind of go to the next stage. And it's like, right, I want my game to be fair and square. So I was like, man, that's so powerful. Once again, like hearing what Momoko was willing to do, and he wanted to do the same thing. It's like, right, I can't be the one to decide. I can't even currently decide. I couldn't decide in the past. I can't decide now what's the value of a life, the meaning of a life. And he's like, I don't think the future me will either. And so for him, his worries kind of like finally drift away, and he's like, thanks to you, I don't have to worry about it. So he kind of accepted, his death. And even Shishiya's line being like, you might have lost, but it's almost like he's like, it's like you won the game and then quit. He's like, I envy you. And Shishiya kind of walks away victorious. But like I said, I think this game had quite the profound impact. Because even Shishiya was like, right, maybe me being here right now against you in this particular game, maybe this was, the poeticness of like, I'd be here right now and we'd have this whole conversation. And I think it was an important conversation for Shishiya. Like I said, this is the first game I really feel like that mask he's always worn slipped away. And this game has forever changed him. Just like Arisu's game against Kiyuma had an effect on him. Usagi was affected by all these games, but like her encounter with that little boy and that lady, and also her running with the queen, like it all had profound effects on him. So currently, this is, of the 6 games we're aware of, 5 have been dealt with, meaning there's still the active King of Spades, but that also leaves like 6 more other games out there. Potentially. Once again, who knows how many of those were dealt with off screen, considering like, right, we've only got 2 more episodes. I'm like, that's a lot to get through 6 more face games. Which I'm also curious, like, is Mirror gonna be one of those or not? You kind of wonder. So that's an interesting thing. But like I said, from this episode, like everyone walked away with hope. It's like everyone's got this resolve. At the very end, we see Aguni sleep, and Akane kisses him and goes off and is like, right, for the future me, she's going to give this a shot. I guess for like Aguni's sake, she wants to like try and deal with this on her own. We'll see how that plays out. I guess in her mind, it's like, right, I want to survive long enough alongside Aguni, so I'm going to make this happen on my own. Like maybe because his arm's injured, he's probably not going to be as like on top of things in this fight, so she wants to go off on her own and see what she can do. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where the next episode takes us with all this. Like I said, only 2 more episodes left, so how this all plays out is definitely going to be really, really fascinating to see. But really, that's all I want to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy. Oh yeah, really quick, I almost did the outro. There was one more person too we saw from behind. I was like, I don't think it's Naragi, because if it was Naragi, they would have shown you. But it was someone kind of wearing, like, it looked like they were wearing something from the beach, but you couldn't tell. Like, they had, like, not frizzled, but, like their hair was kind of, like, messy. I was like, I have no idea who that could be. I think that's going to be an interesting surprise. Like I said, we'll have to wait and see. But, now getting to the outro. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.